Hello everybody, my name's Ryan and I'm a driving instructor, and today, what do instructors look for before somebody goes on a driving test? So what do instructors look for in a person before they send them to a driving test? Before we go any further, like, comment, subscribe. Subscribing is free. You don't have to be a premium. Free. Go and subscribe, please. Thanks. Right. What does an instructor look for before they send somebody to a driving test? So this is kind of in sort of conjunction with test readiness and fit for that test and doing the right thing, and kind of what do I look for in somebody before I send them that test. Quite a while ago I made a video on how long does it take to pass a driving test, and it's how long is a piece of string. In some cases you can learn really quickly, and depending on the person it can be 35 hours. If you're over 30, then often it's your age doubled for the number of hours you require. So if you're 30, it takes 60 hours, probably 40 in the car and 20 hours of private practice, which is what the DVSA has kind of already said all the way along. But they've got this fit for life or drive safe for life, and we're supposed to promote this as driving instructors so that you go out in the real world after passing your driving test and you don't just know how to drive around test routes, but you also know how to drive everywhere else as well. So what do I look for before I send somebody to a driving test? I've never knowingly sent somebody to a driving test who I didn't think was ready 100%. I've sometimes sent people to driving tests and I've thought, yeah, maybe they might be a little bit nervous, but I never expect anybody to fail. That's what I always believe in, that what I've done is correct. And if I believe that what I've done is correct, then it works for me as a person. So if that person fails, then that's possibly because they've overthought something, got nervous, got anxious, got tired, whatever it is. Most of the time when most instructors send people up, they know that they're ready. The instructor absolutely knows whether you're ready or not. He might even been doing mock tests. And some cases you don't, but most of the time you do mock tests. And those mock tests often are marked harder, or far harder, than an examiner would mark them. And the reason that the instructors do that is to make you think about what's happening. So we might make somebody deliberately fail for something that is quite innocent, but an examiner might overlook it because they're using a slightly different guide to what instructors want. What examiners want you to be safe without risk or reducing risk, and they want you to make sure that you're doing all of the right things. A good example of this is moving off. So you start right at the start. When you're doing your driving lessons, start right at the start. You're moving off, you're going to move off, you've set yourself up, you're prepared, you're observing, you're going to do your manoeuvre. Now, there was a video done by a very professional driving instructor about his move off. And his move off, all it consisted of was a rear mirror check, a right mirror check, a blind spot check, and then he went on the gas and gone. But as instructors, we tell you to look all the way around, put a signal on. It isn't actually quite like that. We deliberately do that to make sure it's safe and reduce risk. But there's no book anywhere that tells you exactly on how to move off. Even the DVSA Guide for Driving doesn't put too much detail in it. And what they do instead is they list it another way. So what the examiners do is they're looking for mirror checks and blind spot. But we would, as instructors, we would mark that differently, because there's no real sort of a guide to do everything correctly. This is kind of what I went back to another time when I first started this channel about, should instructors maybe have a CPC system like the bus and the truck drivers do, where on an annual basis we sit in a classroom for one day going through all of those criterias and singing from the same hymn sheet. Because Often you'll find instructors teach things differently depending on how they perceive them, whether they're right or wrong. When it comes to a standard check, a DVSA standard check, what we get graded on, the examiner who's grading the instructor looks for certain criteria. He doesn't really look for everything else. He doesn't look for all the little flourishes that you're supposed to do. He just wants you to identify a fault and attempt to fix the fault and get the pupil to drive independently. There's lots of different things that people perceive. So, as an instructor then, what do I look for? Well, anything that would be you causing a hazard, anything you're going to cause anybody to slow down, swerve or stop. But it's also a feeling. If somebody's dancing all over the road with the steering, you're not going to submit them. If they're being a bit heavy on the pedals and braking quite hard, they're not quite ready, because you don't want them braking too heavy into a junction or a roundabout. You might try and train that out of them, because potentially they might miss a red light, for example, and run a red light, or they might inadvertently brake too heavy and not realise that the car's behind them. So we look for all of the elements: mirror signal, position, speed and look, and hazard, as a guide to us to say whether a person's ready. Can that person drive independently? We're not about actually passing a mock test. Can that person drive independently? So if you drove down a road and you said turn right, do they turn right correctly? Or do they just kind of cut the corner? Or do they check mirrors? Or so there's lots of elements that instructors look at when they submit somebody for a driving test. You get a feeling of what somebody is going to drive like when they're driving around. So you might think, well, that's a bit silly really, but if you ask somebody on a lesson, can you come to a stop on the left hand side in a safe location, then mirror check, signal, coming to a stop, planning ahead, all of those elements should be there, because that's what you've got to do on a driving test. But if I haven't done any of those elements, if I've just stopped the car in the middle of the road, then I'd be taking control of that situation for that pupil, which means that it would be a fail on a driving test. So we don't want to put people in a situation where they are not ready to pass. We don't want to put a pupil in a situation where when they are driving around, that they don't feel confident with what's happening, because it's something they've never done before. You don't want to put somebody in that position. What also do I look for? Well, I look to see whether they're paying attention. I make sure that what they're doing is correct. I make sure that, can this person do all the manoeuvres, for example, without prompts, any prompts? Can that person conduct themselves accordingly on a driving test? Do they have the ability to ask questions if it's needed? Because sometimes you've got to ask questions on a driving test. Do you think that that person, after passing a driving test, is capable of driving the car after that test? And that's what we tend to look at. And sometimes I look at some of the students and go, no, you're not ready. I can see that. It's a mile off. It's like, I want you to be ready. We're not submitting you for a driving test. And sometimes that has actually backfired. At one time, we withdrew my car because the person wasn't ready, and they went and did the test in their own car, and failed. Yeah. There's a chance that they might pass as well. There used to be a time when you used to stick people in sink or swim, and sometimes they used to pass, and you used to think, yeah, you need another 10 hours. But that's what happens in life, I guess. That's what happens. But ultimately, with the quite a few fails that I've had lately, were any of those people ready? Well, of course they were ready. They're all ready. It's just something that's happened when they've been driving, where they have misthought, or been unlucky, or got nervous, or got anxious, or upset, or something's happened that made them fail. We never submit anybody to a driving test who can't pass, or don't know the criteria for that. The criteria for passing a driving test is endless. This is something you only learn from an instructor. You can use the DVSA guide, but that doesn't 100% tell you the full story. And in fact, I think they withdrew that guide recently because more and more people have been attending driving tests in their own car without any professional help and failing. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? Do people need help? Well, yeah, actually, most of the time they do. Most people do need professional help, but then there aren't enough instructors to go around to get the help. So, catch-22, isn't it? Waiting lists have increased again. Not a lot we can do about that. What else is there? I've seen an increase in the number of people taking risks. Uploaded some of that. People being in the wrong lane at a roundabout or a junction for literally no reason other than being stupid, really. So yeah, if you like what you see, comment, like, subscribe. Subscribing is free, and if you're watching this at the weekend, have a great weekend. If you're watching this during the week, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.